This is a City AM Studios production.
Hello and welcome back to Business as Usual, brought to you by Okta, with me, Martin Kimber.
And me, Matt Kenyon. Coming up, Britain is at risk of a lost generation who want to work but can't. That's according to a landmark new report.
Ferrari's new electric car has been slammed online and it's hit the iconic Italian car brand where it hurts, its share price. We'll explore why premium car brands are struggling in the electric era.
Plus, Waitrose drops the price of eggs, and what does the heatwave mean for bowling alleys?
I've always wanted to know.
So first up, the number of young people not in employment, education or training, known as NEETs, could rise to 1.25 million by the early 2030s. The generational fault line is deepening, with the first rungs in the career ladder being knocked away. That is all according to the Milburn Review, a major report that's been led by the former Labour Health Secretary Alan Milburn. He says the current setup of the welfare system is making things worse and that a broken system is failing the younger generation. Our politics and economics reporter Mauricio Alencar has been writing all about this. Mauricio, how are you doing?
I'm very well, thanks. A little bit frustrated.
It's been trailed quite a lot that this was going to have some pretty big findings and it was going to be a pretty damning indictment on the state of our welfare system, some of the pretty perverse incentives, and what is making this social contract go so wrong.
The social contract itself, I'm having a difficult contract with the DWP. We can talk about that a little bit later. But
I know we really sometimes see beneath the curtain into the press office relations. I think that's what this podcast is all about sometimes.
Last week, we saw last Sunday, Alan Milburn already talking about his report into the NEET crisis. That's young people not in education, employment and training. And he's actually been talking about, he's done a few interviews over the month. And on Thursday, 11 a.m., he's going to deliver a speech on the report he's conducted into what businesses are doing about recruitment of young people and what the welfare system, how it's set up young people for failure. And, you know, I've seen what the report is at 11 a.m. I can't talk about that report because for some reason they've done two separate sort of release times where journalists have been given, you know, sight of a report that's going up at 11 a.m. tomorrow, and I've been given other separate speech lines that I can report on for tonight. Well, for yesterday night even.
So it's interesting because this is not the only intervention we're hearing. Obviously, there was the big Tony Blair one from Wednesday, which that pushed for a massive reconsideration of welfare spending and the triple lock. I suppose, what is it particularly about young people being out of work that's so corrosive to the economy? Why is it happening? Why is that number going to potentially cross the million mark?
Let's take businesses' perspective first. We've heard for 2 years since Rachel Reeves' first budget, where you might remember the biggest tax hike was £25 billion on what employers pay on national insurance. So, you know, the national insurance contributions levy. And hiking that by £25 billion is a tax on jobs, quite clearly. You know, the more salaries you give out, pay more tax and so on. That's obviously going to have an effect on the cost of labour. Similarly, last year, the government has rolled out the Employment Rights Bill. Aspects of it, some economists have said, is going to be better for labour market mobility and it might help. But, you know, overall, I think a lot of business groups have been concerned about some of their extra red tape being coming into force, a bill that's been largely pushed by some unions. And on top of that, obviously, young people are facing all the struggles of AI. I don't know if you've seen those videos of US graduates booing their professors when they talk about AI. And you can, I think, there's this feeling, I think, among young people that there's actually a bit of a cover-up of what AI is actually doing to the jobs market as we speak. Everyone's been talking about what the AI could mean for the jobs market. But there are some, last week we had the Standard Chartered chief talk about low value human capital. Young people are kind of seeing these chief execs, these AI bosses, these university professors talk about AI and, you know, looking at their own job prospects and things aren't really matching up. They don't feel like they're being told the truth. I think this report, I think will probably touch on a lot of the AI aspects, but ultimately this is about the cost of labour. This is about years of neglect of young people's hopes. I think that what we've seen already that we can report on is that for every £25 the government spends on welfare, £1 is spent on employment support. So there's a massive imbalance
That's
there
not great, is it?
on benefits for young people and the actual how much funding is going towards helping firms employ more young people and trying to get them onto the jobs ladder.
Matt, you touched on Tony Blair's intervention on Wednesday. Question to you, Mauricio. Quite a lot of people kind of agreeing with Tony Blair on a lot of what he's been saying. He's been slightly accused of sort of client laundering, getting his AI clients kind of points mentioned in that piece.
Yeah.
But it seems to be kind of resonating with a lot of the diagnosis we're seeing of the economy broadly, the cost of labour, high youth unemployment, etc., etc. The problem is the kind of majority backbench sort of Labour Party don't seem terribly interested in the prospect of cutting welfare benefits.
I think this report is going to be important. It's going to raise some issues. And this is actually partly a legacy of Tony Blair, is that there is this now tendency when the government can't really do the difficult things, they sort of commission someone to do a long research project. So after the welfare rebellion we saw last year over those sort of cuts, the government just turned away and said, okay, we'll get this welfare minister to go out and do a 2-year review into disability payments. It's the same kind of thing that's happened here with the meat crisis.
So you're sort of outsourcing a difficult argument.
You've just got like the former health secretary, Alan Milburn, to go out, spend a long time going into the review. And actually, I think we will actually come away from this and think, this is actually a really important body of work. In fact, we know that the recommendations of policies aren't going to come until later this year. Why can't the government actually the ministers take a bit of accountability, look at some of the obvious kind of fixes? Okay, there might be other more complex trends going on, but let's just go on with fixing the long-term aspects of it without having to commission, wait 2 years for a report, and in that time, youth unemployment has now hit an 11-year high.
Because that is very much a reflection of short-term thinking, which is that if you are commissioning reports which sometimes take 2 or 3 years to appear, and also the average length of the general premiership is now about two years, then it's very likely that there's going to be a new government in place who didn't commission this in the first place, could take or leave it. Alan Milburn was a Tony Blair era minister anyway, so it's all quite entangled.
Well, Rachel Reeves wanted to unilaterally cut the winter fuel payments without doing any kind of review or research or anything, and was roundly punished for it. So I can kind of see why they're trying to hide behind process.
Absolutely.
Yeah, when you're not really allowed to make policy anymore.
I think this is a lot of just stasis in policy making, as we're talking about there. We're going to wait. The policies won't come into action until later this year. There'll still be this separate review into disability payment. And all this time, taxpayer money is going towards a high welfare bill, as Tony Blair has pointed out.
That's about what we've got time for, but I'm sure we'll have you back in the studio very soon as this crisis continues to unfold and as we are able to report more on the Milburn review. But thank you very much, Mauricio.
Thank you.
Right, so coming up after the break, Ferrari has announced its first all-electric car, and Martin Kimber is furious about it. Find out why in just a moment. This episode is brought to you by Okta. AI agents are everywhere now, quietly making decisions across organisations. That's great until you stop and think, who's in charge?
If you don't know who an agent is, what it's connected to, or what it's allowed to do, you can't really trust it to act in your interests. That's the bit Okta focuses on. They secure the identity of AI agents, so there's one clear layer of control across the whole system.
Which means every agent has a clear identity, permissions, and a line of accountability, even as things scale.
Risk becomes something you manage, not guess at. Secure every agent, secure any agent. Okta secures AI.
Welcome back to Business as Usual.
Now, it is time to talk about Ferrari. Their share price has rebounded slightly after its slump following the unveiling of their new electric Luce model. Designed by Johnny Ive, the bloke behind the iPhone, not even a papal visit, yes, the Pope did sit in it, could save the Ferrari Luce from widespread online criticism. and in my opinion, completely justified criticism. For $640,000, you can buy a vehicle that more resembles a Hyundai family sedan.
There's contention around that.
Family sedan crossed with an Apple mouse rather than a supercar. It looks like a car designed by HR. It has no spirit, it has no character, it has nothing going for it. Does this spell trouble for the most famous Italian car maker in the world? Michael Hunter's here to answer that exact question.
The markets are never entirely wrong. And the reaction on the market was very, very clear. And it's the latest emblem that we have of these luxury car marks really struggling with a non-petrol head future. They know how to get Jeremy Clarkson and your good self excited. They do not know how to get Jeremy Clarkson and your good self excited with these new ways of doing cars. So I think another thing that's important, as well as all the reaction to the design, and it does look like an Apple mouse. There's no two ways about that.
I wonder if you charge it on the underside, like you
to
now
plug
have
it
to
in from
charge the
underneath.
mouse.
Tip it on its side.
Yes, you've got to turn the car
yeah.
upside down and plug it in.
But it's also, again, getting lost in some of the design stuff here, I think, Ferrari's first five-seater. So Ferrari are not known for five-seater cars.
They're their own version of
Not
the Porsche
known for that
Cayenne.
kind of thing, are they? And so for £474,000, you're getting not a supercar that can zoom around and look amazing and get rave reviews in all the trade press. You're getting what amounts to, as you say, a kind of run around,
It's the very final of the luxury / performance car brands to finally buckle and make an SUV.
Yes.
But I don't.
Is there a single one that's held out now?
Well, I don't think any of them have been well received. I don't think any of them. I mean, I will admit this is not entirely my home turf, but I don't think any of them have got rave reviews. They've all been given the kind of reviews you've given them, haven't they?
It is like the designer looked at the new woke Jaguar and thought, well, that's the kind of market reaction we want. I've nothing against a run-around, efficient, sustainable, cheap-to-run car. I mean, the Tesla Model 3, I looked this up, in America costs $55,000, which is less than a tenth of what this Ferrari would cost you. The Ferrari can go to 0 to 60 in 2.5 seconds. I don't know why a runaround car would have to do that, but fine. The Tesla does it in 2.4 seconds. The Tesla has exactly the same electric range as the Ferrari, and it costs less than a tenth of this car. What is the point of it?
Well, this is going to be a big problem that these brands have, which is the technology is all going to start to equalise. And previously, Ferraris, as they've been talked about, and their engines have been talked about in these almost spiritual terms. And that was always the old Top Gear thing, which is when they started talking about electric cars on Top Gear, the big thing they said was that we've not got that engine noise anymore. They're having to produce it with speakers, like Bose speakers throughout the car. I would say I do think this does look like the Ferrari Qashqai, so I'm not going to leap to a full-blooded defence of this sort of crossover run around $500,000 Ferrari. I do think it reflects how wealth is changing and how tastes are changing among the ultra wealthy. This strikes me as like the influencer's dream car. It's got, because no one really wants the impracticality of those Ferraris of days past
But
anymore.
it's an aspirational vehicle.
If
you've got $500,000 lying around, you want that car.
But I think for a certain sector of the population, I think this is aspirational because it is the expression of an iPhone in car form.
But that's what they're struggling with in car world. They're struggling to translate top end design for an unusual, fancy, eye-catching product into a utilitarian product that more people will buy. So you've got that fancy top-end price tag, but you don't have a fancy top-end look and feel. Now, Johnny Ive at iPhone managed to bridge that divide with the phone. I would suggest, as completely a non-design expert, but I would suggest that Johnny Ive trick is easier to pull off with a couple of grand's worth of tech tops that you have in your pocket, rather than $500,000 worth of tech that moves around at top speeds around the roads of the world.
I mean, Rory Sutherland is rarely wrong about stuff, and he said when the woke Jaguar was unveiled, he said, Jaguar are essentially setting fire to their entire previous audience profile, and they are trying to create an entirely new one, and so out with the old, in with the new. But it feels like all these car companies are completely throwing away heritage a heritage built up over, in some cases, hundreds of years, and you just think like that is a valuable brand. We were talking to Kantar about the world's most valuable brands, and this history behind them is valuable.
But it is valuable, but it is also history. And I suppose that's the other thing that Rory Sutherland said at the time back in October, November 24 about the Jaguar Type 01 or whatever it's called, was that ultimately, if you want anyone to buy any of these cars, there does need to be a recognition that it's a fundamentally different kind of wealthy person. And tastes have probably quite fundamentally changed. The question will be, can any of these brands toe the line between selling a decent volume of increasingly lower volume expensive cars to an audience who are fundamentally different to what came before and who write and think about cars?
It's a very difficult balance. And our picture editor, Andy, on City AM, the print edition,
strong views on this
points out very, very clearly that the new and controversial Luchai looks more or less exactly like the car in dystopian sci-fi film The Demolition Man, starring Sylvester Stallone. So make of that analogy what you
I've
will.
never heard of that, but Felix over there in the corner has, who's about to be on the podcast, so fair enough. Michael, I'll let you have the last word on that debate. So thank you very much for coming in. We shall see how Ferrari's share price does in the near future. And finally, just on the topic of companies potentially targeting the wrong audience, Felix Armstrong, our retail reporter, is here. We got an email recently from Waitrose saying it's investing £20 million to lower prices on everyday staples such as chickpeas, British chicken thighs, white eggs, apples, garden peas. Now, I know that there is a cost of living crisis going on, and I've recently changed my shop to Lidl, but this sounds like the kind of press release we should be expecting from Lidl and Aldi and maybe Tesco and Asda, but not from Waitrose.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it does seem like the battle in the supermarket sector is more and more being fought on discounting, and everyone's feeling the squeeze, as you said. And maybe that this is their attempt to kind of muscle downwards on some of those other supermarkets that have such a big market share, and they see that they maybe have the spare money to cut prices on eggs and steal some shoppers from elsewhere.
But it's a bit of an odd brand to be discounting food when, if I want to treat myself a bit, I'll go to Waitrose or M&S or something like that.
It is, yeah. I guess they would say that, this is no discount on quality, but it is very interesting, and it comes off the back of Rachel Reeves, urging supermarkets to cut prices. She then kind of said that she wasn't doing that. But I asked Waitrose what this is about, and they said that this is part of a long-term investment scheme in their prices. But yeah, who knows? It could be something to do with that.
And Felix, on the topic of spending, it's been one of the big themes this year that people are, with all the cost pressures going around, simply not spending as much on things like hospitality, going out, all these non-essential purchases. You've been speaking to one business leader who has actually been seeing a bit of a boost in the hospitality sector.
Yeah, so I spoke to Stephen Burns, who is the CEO of Hollywood Bowl, which is the UK's biggest 10-pin operator. And he is saying that leisure, as far as he sees it, is on the up. And he reckons that Brits are cutting down on shopping trips rather than trips to the bowling alley.
Why?
So he says that this is all about his pricing. So since he's come in, he's been really keen to make it as much value for money as possible. And he uses this dynamic pricing system where the price can shift £1 either way of the set rate. So if you want to get a discount, you can go at a slightly more inconvenient time and get savings that way, and he thinks that's really paying off.
But even though they've been having quite a good time at the moment, they've posted some quite good results. Weather's glorious at the moment. Looks like it's set to be for a while. It's only May. Could just get nicer and nicer. What could that mean for the business?
Yeah, so this hot bank holiday weekend won't have done any favours for Hollywood Bowl, who say that they tend to do a lot better when the weather is awful and a lot worse when the weather is lovely like this. And he says especially with this bank holiday where people would have been booking their days out and their activities a long term in advance, he said that that's not going to have done them any favours.
Which leads us neatly on to our Thursday night drinks weather forecast. Felix, do you want to do the honours for Thursday night?
Yeah, so Thursday night it is going to go back up to 30 degrees.
Whoa.
Hey.
With a slight bit of cloud though, so
Slight bit of
we
cloud.
might not be outside the pubs.
The emoji on my iPhone just has a cloud, which I'm sure Michael Hunter would have a thing to say
Yeah,
about.
there's presumably that'll be the case all weekend, and then it'll be glorious sunshine.
No, over the weekend it starts to get a little bit chillier. Saturday, 25 degrees. Sunday, 22 degrees, which compared with what we have had is...
10 years ago, that would have been the hottest day of summer.
Yes.
Guys, that's about all we have time for. Thank you very much for joining us once again in the studio.
Thank you.
Well, that's about all we have time for today. Thank you very much for listening to Business as Usual, brought to you by Okta.
And of course, don't forget to subscribe to City AM's daily newsletter and to download our free app.
It even has puzzles now. We'll be back in your podcast feeds tomorrow at 6 a.m. But for now, bye-bye.
Goodbye.